Actually, oh, all right.
I'll never get used to these cameras.
Well, uh, Minnesota is Dakota and Ojibwe homeland. It's centered within Dakota creation stories and is also an important place in traditional Ojibwe history and the histories of other Native nations. It is both an ancestral and contemporary home to many Native people. The idea of home and homelands plays a central role in our recently developed exhibit, Our Home Native Minnesota. My name is Ben Gessner, and I'm the curator of Native American Collections. I want to take the opportunity to encourage you all, when you're ready, to visit the Our Home exhibit and the community stories that we've shared within that space here at the History Center. The History Center Museum is now open, and we welcome you to visit by reserving tickets online. And once again, I'm joining you from one of our collection storage rooms in the lower level of the Minnesota History Center in St. Paul. Personally and professionally, I acknowledge that museums in many ways have played a role in cultural interruption and work towards repairing that. Museum collections can play an important role in community health as community members work to revitalize language, food, artistic forms, as well as sport. Welcome to the 10th event in the Artist in the Gallery series, where today we'll be talking about lacrosse, or the creator's game, traditional stick game, with Inyan Walking Elk and John Hunter. Before I turn it over to Inyan and John for introductions, let me ask the audience to please leave questions in the chat. Staff are moderating that space and will bring them up during the Q&A in about 40 minutes. We also invite you to fill out a short survey following today's program and let us know what you think. Your input helps us to build better programs. So, Inyan and John, I guess, who are you and how are you? And I'm glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Ben. I can go first, John, if that's okay with you. My name is Inyan Walking Elk. I am an enrolled member of the Crow Creek Hunkpati Dakota Oyate, and that's located in Fort Thompson, South Dakota, right off the Missouri River and the Big Bend Dam. I'm also a descendant of the Southern Tsitsistas and Hinonai tribes in Oklahoma and the Hopi Nation from Arizona. Doing good today. Really glad to be a part of this conversation. I love the game. I love TCNL. Our family's been involved since John and Lana created it. And we are looking forward to sharing our experiences today with you all. Pidamaya.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Hunter. I'll just introduce myself just in Ojibwe, say John Hunter, Indigenous. I'll say also in Ho-Chunk language, we say Rajra, John Hunter Guy, John Hunter Ga, and Guy Hirena. My father's family is from Winnebago tribe of Nebraska. And his mother, my paternal grandmother's family is from Muskogee Creek down outside of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And my mother's mother is from White Earth Nation. And I'm enrolled in Muskogee Creek Nation out of Oklahoma. I'm super excited to be here. I can't believe that I'd be thinking about cool and rainy weather at this time of this early summer here in Minnesota. But we've, of course, been, as we come out of COVID, looking for ways to engage and be together and do the things that we like to do. One of those is lacrosse. And in fact, we're helping facilitate lacrosse even this week with some of our youth. And so I feel very, very grateful, very thankful that we've been fortunate to be here and be healthy and continue to pass along and share along and be part of that tradition of our sharing our culture and continuing our culture because it's meaningful. It's been incredibly meaningful to my life and my family's life, and I feel that way for others in the community too. So I really am honored to be here and feel fortunate to be here. So thanks for having me, and can't wait to share.
Yeah. Well, it is really great to see both of you. I know, like, I'm used to seeing you kind of like all over the place, like out in the community and here at the History Center, and it's been a really long time. And I'm glad also that we're kind of moving through the coming out on the other side of this. I'm glad to hear that you're also being able to potentially get together and play and do some activities related to lacrosse. So I guess for me, I didn't realize necessarily. I'd heard, I think, probably growing up, like there's professional lacrosse. You know, this is a game that's played. It's played out east. It's played at like Ivy League schools. Like I understand that it's a sort of out east game. I didn't know much about it, and then later I heard that it was actually a Native American game. It was something that maybe the Iroquois Haudenosaunee people had out there, and it was adapted. And so I'm wondering really kind of about the history of it here specifically. Now I've pulled a lot of objects and I've pulled a lot of artwork and some words in this book by Schoolcraft that sort of describe it, Europeans and Euro-Americans encountering the ball game in this region. But I'm wondering if you have any perspective on the history of it, or kind of what it's like here, maybe how it differs from out east.
Yeah, I think you really, when you mention Ivy League schools, I think that's a really key point for those that are familiar with Ivy League schools and them being this kind of privileged educational system and this kind of privileged realm. And that, unfortunately, this kind of idea of lacrosse being prep school, a sport for athletes and out east, it's definitely alive and well. That misconception is alive and well. I encounter it a lot in Minnesota, and so and in fact, that's a lot of the work that TCNL does in our outreach is try to combat that, which is really a myth. I mean, it's a myth in the terms that lacrosse is only an East Coast prep school thing. It's not at all. In fact, we know lacrosse is Minnesota's oldest team sport, or at least the area we call Minnesota today. That they or Dakota people and later Ojibwe people played lacrosse in this area. Just there's known fields that just a couple miles from where I sit today, where these games were played, and so that's one of the first things I talk about with the new groups when we do our outreach is that if you're a Minnesotan, if you're from this land, and we all know that we're from the land, like we incorporate the land into our bodies, as we eat the food, eat the vegetables, this land literally becomes part of us. And so whether you're native or you're non-native, you're from this land, if you've spent any time here, and you are part of that heritage. So you're part of that lacrosse heritage, whether you were taught that in school or not taught that in school. So you, just by being here and residing here, you have that lacrosse heritage here. Of course, now if you're Dakota or Ojibwe, that's been carried on. The culture of that's been carried on through your family. But it's we talk about there's this idea that one of the oldest known lacrosse sticks, at least that's in public collections, is from the state of Minnesota. And so people are really surprised to hear that this game has as much the heritage, if not more of a heritage, than any of the the Harvards or the Dartmouths and whatnot. So never be afraid to step on that field and pick up a stick if you're from here, because it's part of who you are, and it's part of all of us as Minnesotans.
That's great, John. Thank you. How about how about you? When did you? So I've heard you say TCNL a couple times, both of you. So that is the Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. That's an organization that John helped found, but also that you've been a part of too, right? How long have you been active in this sort of activity?
I can't even remember the time frame now. But since they started, I think TCNL really started as really like bringing the game back for the youth. And I have two younger children. And at the time, I got them involved after hearing some stories from John and others about the game belonging to us. And I come from a family where it wasn't necessarily kept and we weren't so familiar with it. And I can echo that, that kind of exclusiveness of modern lacrosse that we felt as a family. So my kids got involved in it initially and, you know, attending practices with them, just kind of watching them learn and trying to learn along with them in some ways, but not necessarily by playing, simply by spectating and supporting my children. And that kind of developed into a men's team that I believe John was really instrumental in starting. And the Ho-Chunk Nation ended up hosting a tournament. They were reviving and bringing back their game at the same time. And I think it was the first men's lacrosse tournament in 40 years at the time that it took place, which, you know, was amazing. It made you really proud to, you know, to be witness to that. And a lot of the spectators and supporters of the men and their were us women and their families and our children. And we sat there. A lot of us were athletes already. A lot of us wanted to be involved. And we came back from the tournament and, you know, Sasha Brown actually said, hey, you know, let's get a women's team together. And the women started playing. We started practice. It was really hilarious at first, you know, and we were kind of golfing or playing polo. We couldn't even catch, you know, it was just, it probably, for spectators, it probably wasn't too entertaining unless you like to laugh. But we started to play and we formed this kind of league, I guess you could say, that developed into the sisterhood. And now we're still playing with COVID and, you know, other complications being added, primarily being COVID. It's been lonesome without the game. But TCNL was really instrumental in starting with the youth, bringing it back through them, and then their parents and their families and the community networks getting involved and starting to play and learning stick making, learning the stories behind it. And now it's, you know, it's here, it's back. So that's kind of my experience with it thus far.
That's great to hear. I know, there's a lovely photo that we just put up of you and some of your teammates.
Yeah, we were feeling pretty powerful after a hot day of playing lacrosse. So that's, you know, that's just a snapshot of some of them. There's a huge network of women, and there are women from nations, not just from here, not from the homelands. There's people from all over Turtle Island. You know, we have Pueblo members, Dene members. We have members from all over. So there's a connectedness that the game brings, no matter where you're from and no matter what nation you come from. I'm glad to be a part of that.
That's awesome. So, John, I was digging around and I was looking up. So Henry Schoolcraft was sort of a ethnographer and a geographer and a geologist and an Indian agent, and sort of he was commissioned by Congress to really do a pretty large, substantial study of Native people, and he was in this region with you know, among the Dakota people and Ho-Chunk and others, and he was further west out in the Missouri River and all that. But I came across what he wrote about the ball game. He said, and this is in the 1850s, probably 1840s, he was doing this research as well, but his volumes were published in the 1850s. He said the ball is carved and thrown in a stick about 2 or 3 feet long, with a little circle at the end to assist in picking it up. The hoop has some buckskin cords across to keep the ball in. And I've known an Indian to throw the ball over the boundaries, which were half a mile long, in 3 throws. When it is seen flying through the air, there's a great shout and hurrah by the spectators. So he gets into describing it a little bit. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the stick itself, because this looks different than maybe what people are accustomed to when they think of like a lacrosse stick or a modern lacrosse stick that's a little bit bigger. And then maybe about like the game itself. How does it compare to modern lacrosse?
Right. Well, to talk about the sticks a little bit, excuse me. So, today's modern lacrosse for the men, so some people compare it to hockey, the way they wear all this padding and helmets and stuff like that. But the biggest, there's a lot of differences with the modern game, but the modern game was actually not, we don't have the time to go in through the whole history, but it was based on what we call the Iroquois style traditional stick. What I have an example here. It's try to hold it back. So you notice this kind of upside down tier shape. And today's plastics made out of plastic and aluminum sticks, where this is all made out of wood. This is used by the Haudenosaunee people. Excuse me for that noise, but I apologize for that. The modern stick was based off of this design, this upside down tier shape. And so today, and which was not used, it was used by the folks, Haudenosaunee people, the East Coast. But the stick that we use here is also known more generically as a Great Lakes style stick. And this is, again, a all wood stick with as opposed to that teardrop shape, has this circular hoop. And this is the stick style of the Dakota, the Ojibwe, Menominee, Ho-Chunk, and folks of this region. And of course, the Ojibwe extend all the way into Canada. Historically, Dakota people also. So this covered there was a large geographic area that used this style stick. The third stick that is also not known, but was used by the indigenous people of the southeast United States is the stickball sticks. So this is Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole, and they also play lacrosse, but using 2 sticks, and they still continue that tradition today. But our stick is unique to this land, and it's unique to our people. And so that is the work that TCNL does, is we facilitate this game. And the major difference is that we do not, there's 2 goals and there's 2 teams, that the team with the high score wins. Now in modern lacrosse, the men wear a lot of protective equipment. We do not. The modern style game has a lot of technical rules, such as how many players on a field, how big is the field, how out of bounds. We do not, in the traditional game, we do not use those technical rules. So as many players, there's an agreement that's made between the 2 teams as far as, if there's number of players, or if there's, particular boundaries. Typically not. Also, there's a little bit more, also less technical rules about the physical contact, or different, moves or motions that you can make. We don't adhere to as many of those technical rules. But really, we, in the spirit of the game, our rules are really meant to honor the the higher purpose of the game is to honor Creator, to play for the enjoyment of Creator, to bring one another together, to provide well-being for us and for our relatives. So there are protocols that we do follow, but they're not technical rules like you see in the modern game. So usually when we have first time traditional ball players that come from the modern game, they get very they're really surprised about how in some ways free flowing the traditional game is. So there's less players are allowed the freedom of to feel the energy of the movement and to feel the energy of each other and the enjoyment of the game. And they have less, they because they have to dedicate less of their kind of their brain space, their mental capacity towards all those technical rules and all those rules about padding and equipment. There's a lot more emphasis on just being really present, in the moment, in the movement, in the traditional game.
I would agree with John. And because of I don't want to say a lack of rules, it's really just requires that each individual is self-aware and self-disciplined and respectful of whoever you're playing with, whoever's participating. And so we don't really need those rules. We have that self-awareness and that self-respect, that mutual respect for the game and for one another. So I think that allows a different type of enjoyment for the game, even though it's competitive, even though it can get really physical, you have so much fun.
That's great. I'm wondering if we could just go back to something you said and showed us, John, just for a second. But we have a Catlin print in our collection too. It's a lithograph that was done after a painting, and I know we have an image of it, and it shows the difference between. It's actually behind me here, but I think we have a digital image of it as well that we'll put up. But it shows the difference. It has a Choctaw player, and then it has what's identified as a Sioux or Dakota player in the middle, and then I think I might just grab it. Oh, that is an Eastman print. That's different, but that's a print of the. There we go. That's the Catlin. If you look at it, the Choctaw player on the left hand side is he's got those sticks, those little ones that are the variation, and then you see the Great Lakes versions for the other two men. But yeah, I also wanted to talk about, because you both have spoken about this, and I know I've talked a lot. I've worked with Frankie Jackson, who helped sort of set up the Chashiapi Lacrosse and the Lightning Stick Society, and I think we can think about this as a sport, but we can also think of it as this activity that really sort of is bringing young men and young women together and sort of solidifying, like you were saying, we have this mutual respect. We've got these certain like cultural values. Like, do you find that there are like cultural values or things that are sort of passed down in addition to this, just like you said, like it's not just a sport, you're doing it, there's a spiritual aspect to it, there's those other things as well?
Yeah, there's that spiritual aspect of it is really important. It's some people would say it's a ceremony that's happening. So you need to be mindful of how you bring yourself to that place, how you're thinking, your prayers. You have to be really conscious of all these different things going on within you because it's a ceremony. And you need to be respectful of that, but respectful of yourself ultimately. And again, it also speaks to that connectedness because we're putting that energy out there with everybody involved in that ceremony, so to speak. It gives energy to all of that, good or bad. That's what you're bringing to it. So culturally, I guess you can say, and spiritually, that's a part of our teachings. You walk with those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts, those words, and they're not just for you. You know, you have to think of the elders there, the spectators, you have to think of the people you're playing with, and you have to think about the young ones who are watching you and paying attention to, you know, you might not even think about it, but they mock you, they mimic you, every little motion you make. And you know, I can be an emotional player, I guess, in many sports. So that's something that I can say that this game has taught me to be more mindful and be more controlling of that, and to consider the spiritual side of things as a Dakota woman and as someone who's a mother too.
Thank you. You know, John, also I was going to bring up, because I think when we first met in person was here at the Historical Society. You came here to really look at this stick and a couple of other sticks. I met you and your father at the same time, and we spent the afternoon kind of in collections looking at these older sticks, and you took measurements and photographs, and I feel lucky that I get to be a part of what I think of as a revitalization of like community health. You know, we see it all the time with the artists that we work with the people who are revitalizing language, with the people who are working on food, you know, pre-contact indigenous foodways, that sort of thing. What was it like for you? I guess I have two questions, but what was it like for you to come here and do that? And then is this a sport that you feel like was sort of lost and that has been purposefully brought back?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. First time we met was there in the collections, and so you know so in terms of the journey of Twin Cities Native Lacrosse and the work and the games that we've been able to do, that the opportunity to connect with the stick was significant. Without that opportunity, you know, I don't think that we would have had, you know, we would have been inspired and drew that energy to continue the work that later became, these teams and the gatherings that we have now today. Because it really is, one thing that's great about lacrosse is that, or Tecopseh Chapi or Bagatawewin, Chabnakisik, is that it also, and this is my own belief, is that it ties us together again, and shows us that how we're connected to our plant relatives. If it's not without the stick, that the stick is truly a partner in the game. That the rule of traditional lacrosse, you can't carry that ball with your hand. Only the stick can do that, and vice versa. The stick doesn't have the legs to carry the ball down the field. So it's really a game of partnership of you and the stick, and the stick that comes from the ash or the hickory tree. And so without having a stick in my own family, the game wasn't passed down through my family. And we know through boarding schools, and maybe only the most at the time our ancestors had to make some hard decisions about what was to be carried on and what maybe had to be left to other families. And so in my family, lacrosse was not carried on and passed down. So I had to reach out. I had to reach out and find elsewhere to find stories and find connections. And so I'm grateful that the History Center had those sticks, because at the time of my visit to the History Center, I had never seen a stick in person. I had a mentor, Dan Ninham, I knew from Red Lake area, who had talked to me about the traditional game, who had encouraged me to learn the game, but he had not. I hadn't had the time to see a stick. He showed me a stick later, but Frankie Jackson also I knew of his work, but I hadn't seen a stick yet. So the History Museum was the first time that my father supporting me, us together wanting to learn about lacrosse. So that was our opportunity, and so we're grateful for the History Center for as one of the things that they do is try to hold these items and take care of these items. So that was really fascinating. I'll never forget that visit. I think that was one of the third or fourth things that we did when we organized Twin Cities Naval Lacrosse was go down to the History Museum. We had heard from somebody that was studying bows, was wanting to learn about Dakota bow making, like bow and arrow. They were the one that suggested we, reach out to the History Museum. Now I forgot the second part of the question.
Well, I guess was just talking about it. Like, I think you hit on it. Like, did you feel like this was sort of like a lost sport? And I know you said it in your family. It felt like it was. And I guess I'd want to hear the same question for Ian too. Is this something like you feel like you're bringing back, something that wasn't there? Like you didn't have it as a child, but you're bringing it back. So you're able to pass it on. There's a generational difference between you who are recovering it and then someone coming up with it. And I'm just sort of thinking about this stuff in terms of like community health and restorative, in some ways, restorative justice, and the role that museums can play in some of that work. Because you've been here before too, Ian.
That was part of our experience too. Like John, we wanted to know about, our ancestors who played the game. So we went to the collections. We met, I think you hosted us, Ben, and we went and saw the lacrosse sticks that you had in the collections. For my family, it was something that was lost, similar to John's. We didn't have sticks that were passed down. I didn't have grandparents who shared the game or even stories of the game with us. So we didn't grow up hearing it. Actually, ironically, my dad's from Oklahoma, so he had a really close friend that they called each other brothers, who was Seneca and Cayuga. I grew up playing Indian football. Oh, we lost John, it looks like. I grew up playing Indian football in Grove, Oklahoma, with the Six Nations down there. And it was not a stickball game, but instead it was always the males versus the females. The women could pick up the ball and throw it. The men had to kick it and throw it between two posts. So for the longest time, I thought that was my people's game because they made me feel so at home and so connected. But that's, that now that I know our game, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning, even though we've been involved in it for years. There was definitely a sense of loss, and then this sense of almost like belonging. I don't want to sound cheesy, but knowing that we're a part of revitalizing something that always belonged to us, even if it had to be reintroduced in order for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I also want to just mention that in about 5 minutes, we're going to start taking some questions from the audience. So if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can throw some questions up for us. And you're right, we lost John. Have been having some connection issues. So let's see what else. I was going to ask John, and I heard him mention as well, kind of at the beginning, that like if you're from Minnesota, you should feel like this is part of your heritage. But I'm wondering about, since there is a sort of a spiritual aspect, maybe and a ceremonial aspect a little bit to this, it's not just necessarily a social recreational game. Is it all right for non-native people to come out and support you and be interested in it and learn more about it? What are your feelings about that?
You know, I think it's important that the game is protected, just like a lot of our other ways and ceremonies and things that we've lost. I guess we always say we've lost them, but in a lot of ways they were taken, or
Mhm.
they were we were prohibited from participating and carrying them on. But I think it's important that even non-natives have some understanding of the game, or how can they fully respect it. When I first started to learn about the game and play it, I was really protective of that knowledge, just because I was still learning, and I still am, like I said. And I wanted to, I guess, as Indigenous people, as Dakotas, all the different nations we come from, it often feels like we're always giving things away. For a little while in the beginning, I was protective in the way that I wanted to keep that for our family and for our people and our community to learn. But I've learned along the way that people can't or don't always respect what they don't understand, and sometimes even when they do understand it that doesn't make a difference. But it's important that that ability to understand it, to learn about it, is there. So we do have non-native people come out and spectate, watch, and learn. I think there's even a couple scholars who've participated or co-authored books about the game and things like that. So really just that awareness of people needing to understand, and I've applied that to Takapsi Shapi as well.
Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. There you are.
Sorry, everybody. I'm having some internet issues, and I think I've got them corrected. Sorry about
That's
that.
absolutely all right. We were just talking about, since this is something that's been really a tradition that's been revitalized and has kind of, in a way, been maybe, like Ian just said, sort of taken or prohibited before in your communities. Like, what's the sort of, there must be part of you that feels like this is ours and we want to keep this and protect this. And at the same time, maybe try to cultivate some appreciation by non-native people as well. So I was just asking Ian, like, are non-native people okay to spectate or to sort of dig further, learn about Twin Cities Native Lacrosse and support you in any kind of way?
Yeah, I think it's I encourage non-native people and non-indigenous people to do their own work, and seek out their own source resources. Um, Unfortunately, we know, like many things with cultural understanding, is that there's some deep institutional roots to these misunderstandings, and so it's the story of lacrosse is really to learn the story of our colonial settler history. So and it's to me it's a very interesting story. So you know when was the last game community game played by the Dakota people? And Frankie Jackson I think put a comment in about that. It was prior to the exile. So the story of Dakota lacrosse follows the story of um, the history of Dakota, of the people as a whole. And I think about what our ancestors had to go through to preserve our our culture and the sacrifices they made. And um, we know that some stories like that, some of our ceremonies had to be done hidden, and had to be done underground. And I just think that both what makes lacrosse to Chapi so special, it also was kind of why it maybe wasn't retained, because it's this large community we're talking about, just not just a couple people. We're talking about groups of people, large games. And I just can't imagine that there was any way to take lacrosse games underground during those really dark days of settler colonialism. Like, there was just not a way to continue the game openly, out in the open. So, um, so with that in mind, I'm very particular about who's playing the game and what they know about the game, and um, you know, but and a lot of the outreach that we do is really still, as we know, that there's still in these communities where there's still effects of racism, and unfortunately, and that um, we have to educate where folks are not able to educate themselves. You know, I will go out and help do outreach. So if for any reason, so that my indigenous ball players, when they go out on their own, that they aren't confronted with misunderstanding and misconceptions and at worst, stereotypes, you know, so that they can, it's kind of like a protective armor as they go out into communities that are not like themselves, that they hopefully those other communities ahead of our youth players' arrival, that maybe they have a chance, they've heard the history. We know for a fact that, you know, uh, indigenous, history is not told, is not taught to the same level as other aspects of our history. So it's not also it's not a, um, it's not necessarily the individual's fault. It's how our education system is is continuing to improve on that, I think, and the History Center's been part of that as well. Really that education aspect. Um, so I'll stop there. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate both of you being here and sort of sharing, because what you're doing today is educating us. This is a rich cultural tradition and a rich sport from this region that I would say not a lot of people know about. So I do appreciate your time. I am wondering if we have any questions from the audience. If we do, they'll pop up on the screen. All right. So Ben says, thank you so much for talking about this. I teach Minnesota history and was wondering what resources you have available to do a hands-on lesson on Minnesota lacrosse. So John, have you ever spoken with schools or is there any other, even maybe not hands-on, maybe not, let's not restrict it to hands-on. Do you have any other resources maybe that you could share as well?
Yeah, in terms of, you know, I appreciate the comment. I really look forward to schools, um, teaching more about the game in the classroom. I think that's really vital. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of curriculum that's written. I know of some curriculum, some folks that are working with TCNL, and
All right. Well, we lost John again. So, do we have any more questions that we can go to? Otherwise, all right. Megan says, I've heard that the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois, have a lacrosse team headed to the Olympics and that they are participating on behalf of their sovereign nation. Are any Minnesota teams participating? How can we support teams heading to the Olympics? So, John or Ian, what's up with the Haudenosaunee professional team?
I think Megan's referring to the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Nationals.
Uh-huh.
They attend the World Games, I believe, every year. And I know one way that they could be supported is an issue that they often run into is that they, as a nation, provide their members their own passports outside of whatever colonizing entity exists for them. So supporting the nationhood and their autonomous right to participate in that by way of their own methodologies of passporting and identifying their members. That's one way I would recommend supporting the Iroquois Nationals. I don't know of a Minnesota team that's going, but I know John and Frankie, and I think even Jeremy Red Eagle comes over to Minnesota sometimes. They have a lot of young men, youth players that are up and coming. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that from this region soon. But John could probably speak more to that than I could.
Yes. We are currently have just started the first phase in starting an Ojibwe or Anishinabe Nationals team out of the co-founder is Isaiah Kiknaswe out of Walpole Island, and he has submitted paperwork for recognition on the World League for an Anishinaabe Nationals team, and in fact had started to recruit to send a team to World Championships that were going to be held this August in Winnipeg, which would bolster the inclusion into the World Games and then the Olympics. So this is just breaking news. The work on the Anishinaabe Nationals started in early 2019, and it's going really strong now. Of course, the Anishinaabe includes Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, and other tribes throughout the United States and Canada. And again, Ian's 100% right on that. To support the Iroquois, their sovereignty, their ability to issue their own passports, that is supporting all tribes. They're in their quest for sovereignty and recognition for the Olympic Games. So for the Anishinaabe to issue their own passports, we need support for that, and we, as well as the Dakota. Again, Frankie Jackson and others have already been down this in their preparations and worked towards creating a Dakota national team as well, in recognition of their own sovereignty. So
That's great. Thank you, John.
great question.
Do we have any other questions from Jessica? This is a question from Randy. What does John think of today's high school and collegiate varsity games that are being played?
I guess I'm wondering a little more about that question. What do I think of the popularity of those games? I think, well, I'll just say from an indigenous perspective.
So, John, we are losing. If you can hear me, we're losing your audio a little bit.
The game has a tremendous ability, and it's yeah. Okay.
So we can try it if you're able to turn off your video and maybe just use your audio. We could try that for a second. No. How about you, Ian? Do you follow any college teams? You follow any of the professional teams? Any of the other clubs?
I follow one club, and that's the Fort Lewis Skyhawks, because one of our youth players, Nina Polk, she started playing with TCNL. She developed into a pretty darn good lacrosse player, and now she's, I think she just completed her freshman year at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. Her mom is a part of the team, Diani. Whitehawk, and her dad's a part of the men's team, Daniel Polk. So I do follow Nina. I watch her games. I did follow the Swarm until they were relocated out of Minnesota.
Right.
And again, that's another thing that TCNL introduced us to. They actually got all the families together and took us all to a Swarm game. So I'd say that's the extent of what I follow. I know the female modern game is less contact is allowed than the male game. So that's one, I guess one personal opinion of mine is that would be really tough to play when you've come up from the traditional game. But so I commend Nina. She's managed to learn both simultaneously and perform so well. She's an amazing player. So I do follow Fort Lewis. Glad to have you back, John.
That's great.
Again, I apologize for the difficulties. Yeah, we promote the modern game. Nina is a perfect example of that there's if an indigenous youth right now wants to go out and play at the high school level or wants to play at college, they'll have to, the traditional game, they'll have to organize themselves, and it would just be, at most an intramural sport, that they could do, on the at the park. But if they want to get involved in the larger experience of these leagues and these high school leagues and college leagues, and they have to learn the modern stick game. So we teach the modern stick game. Twin Cities Native Lacrosse, hosts and modern stick teams because as a way for Native youth to learn, the version of the game that's recognized, like we mentioned earlier, the Olympics. There's no chance to play on that big a stage with our traditional game right now. So, but for some of our players, they are really excited by the modern stick game and the ability to play, teams from across the state or across the region. That's really exciting for them. And then, like we said, the differences of the modern stick game, there's certainly some things that are really neat that they really enjoy with that. So I like our chances. I like our ability to go play the modern stick game of high school and college, but I will always try to teach the traditional game first and as much as I can.
Great. Thank you. All right. Can any native join Twin Cities Native Lacrosse, even if they've never played before?
Absolutely. We're going to start games next week. I know it's going into the holiday, but on Tuesdays this summer at Lake Nokomis Park in Minneapolis, we're going to be gathering about 6 o'clock on Tuesdays. It's in the part of the park that's off the intersection of Woodlawn Boulevard and Minnehaha. So it would be east of the rec center, kind of in the northeast corner of the lake. There's a small field, not an athletic field, but an open flat area that we gather for our community games. And anybody, native or non-native, is welcome to come out. We have community sticks. So we got a set of 30 sticks that we that go or travel around with us and are used, as loaners. So you're welcome to join us then. That's good for the Minneapolis and Twin Cities area. As I mentioned, there's other organizers of lacrosse in Fond du Lac area, in Sisseton area, and Lower Sioux, Anishinabe. There's many ways to play the game and learn more. And speaking of the college game, we are also giving out tickets to the PLL game that's happening on July 9th, 10th, and 11th. And this is not an endorsement of the league, but I just want to say that we play. Our main deal is playing the game and teaching the game, but we also do other activities together. So if you want to be a part of our program, you can sign up on the email list, and you can, become part of the regular community of traditional players. So come on out. Also, we have a Facebook page, Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. Our website's under development still. We hope to have that up by the end of the summer, if not sooner. But probably the best way to find us online is on Facebook, Twin Cities Native Lacrosse.
Awesome. Thank you, John. All right. Do you play with traditional lacrosse sticks, and did you make them yourselves? Who made your sticks? Either of you?
Sure. We do. We play, or my family plays with traditional lacrosse sticks. I'll be honest, I've never ever played the modern game in my life. Not even yet. My kids have, but we play with one of our sticks. We participated in making. So I would say it was kind of like a team effort. So our family helped with that one. And then our other sticks were made by a really good stick maker who periodically plays with the group. And his name is Ben Spears. So we do regularly play with the traditional sticks.
How about you, John? I know you made those measurements and took photos. Did you end up making some sticks yourself? Have you ever made one?
We did. I made, or actually, my father's a much more patient man than myself, and so he helped me make some sticks, and it was a very enjoyable activity. And I encourage anyone that has a chance to learn about making sticks to do so. And we play our preferred game is to play with the traditional stick wherever we go and wherever we can. But stick making, it inquires a lot of attention to and patience. So some folks really enjoy it, and other folks, enjoy it less. But we have, for TCNL, we do stick making, but we found it, myself, I'm as much as I enjoy it, I'm just as not as coordinated or kind of crafty. And so we utilize a lot of stick makers, folks that are really, really good with the tools and whatnot. But so Ben Spears, David Butler, Joe Goki, Tom House. There's a lot of folks that have taken it to the level where they make sticks, and they're able to make sticks for a lot of other people. So when I make a stick, it's usually for myself or just for my family.
Great. Well, we are just nearing the 1 hour mark, so I think I just want to again thank you both for taking time to be here with us today and to educate us about some of this incredible work that you're doing. And I'm very excited to have spoken with you. I'm very excited that you're going to be back kind of out in the field doing these activities again. I'm sure it's been a long year, a long season without it. So just thank you. And I want to remind anyone viewing this program that you can take a short little survey that will be posted in the comments. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.